This is Dread from Epic Builds, and in today's video topic, we will go over Poison Tornado Serpent Strike Swarmblade, sucking up enemies in a noxious cloud of death. Before we get into the video, usually this portion is where I would chill for myself, but today is different. A large part of this build's functionality comes from the work of our very own Amarathi. He has done a lot of work on this channel specifically and has started to work on his own and is currently posting build guides there. He has been making a large amount of content lately on his YouTube channel and will be posting the Frostbite version of this build in a week or so. I would heavily suggest you sub to him, as he deserves as much love as I get. So for Poison Tornadoes, this build would normally not be viable. Self-cast tornadoes are absolutely horrid due to their poor mana efficiency and requiring loads of cast speed, and even the payoff isn't really that good. But when you combine it with the large amount of rage generation with Eterra's Path plus Gardens of Rage, it means that we have enough mana to spam all the tornadoes we want. We do this thanks to the Swarmblade tree. It gives us 3 stacks of Howling Cascade, which we get from hitting enemies with melee attacks. It means every 3 attacks we spawn an additional tornado, and we attack pretty much 3 times per second, so it's like a tornado per second. Each of these tornadoes hit twice per second, and we can lay a lot of tornadoes on the same target thanks to the stationary node inside of the tree. These tornadoes also suck in enemies, meaning that we can create a large ball of tornadoes on the ground and watch enemies get sucked into. It means we can create a few tornadoes on the ground and walk away, which helps our clear immensely. Serpent Strike is an invaluable tool for this build, as scaling large amounts of percentage damage, close to 2k%, meaning all of our prefixes can be focused on more important things like scaling Salt the Wounds for a lot of poison effect, which not only affects the base poison damage, it also affects the innate poison shred. This means attack speed is one of our most valuable scaling sources. As we stack it, we create more tornadoes, which hit more often, which stack more poisons, which shred more resistance, and your damage gets exponentially bigger. To be able to stand still and stack our poisons up, it means we need some strong defenses, which Serpent Strike also handles. We not only have the superstars of Aspect of the Boar and Impervious, which works really well with dodge by the way. We get up to 60% dodge chance just for spamming attacks. All of that dodge flat we get can be increased, which means katanas become our best in slot with dodge percentage suffixes and attack speed prefixes. That also works really well with the Salt the Wounds because of all the extra critical strike multiplier turning into poison effect, making katanas our best in slot 100%. All of this combined with a mean killing machine, and definitely a strong way to currently play Swarmblade. I would suggest an Eterra's Path before playing this build, as it solves all of your rage issues you could have, and you can farm it in the Spirits of Fire, and it's a pretty common drop. And as being with the single target, we gain rage on hit, which keeps us topped off. You only really need to worry about the times when you're in monoliths, which the Gardens of Rage plus the Eterra's Path combo is enough to handle. With all that being said, let's get into the video, shall we? Alright, here we are in game with the build. So let's just get transformed, shall we? So for the skill rotation this time around, so at the start of a monolith, you want to be moving around until you see at least 3 of these vines on the ground. They'll show in the upper left. Makes it really easy to track because that's actually how you gain your rage back thanks to Eterra's Path. And that combined with Garden of Rage here means that once you get the combo started, you can kind of like keep it going. You need to have these at the start of the monolith, otherwise you're going to run out of rage and then get kicked out of form. So you definitely want to have some vines going before you start actually attacking things. And then once you actually have some vines, you can actually start attacking the thing here. And as you can tell, my rage generation is pretty good considering. And we're getting to about 800k ticks there. I saw 800k ticks. As you can tell, absolutely phenomenal for a Swarmblade build. Absolutely amazing overall, and a really fun way of playing the build. Now, that wasn't counting the Maelstrom procs either, because Maelstrom will actually proc lightning, but the problem is it won't proc lightning on the dummy, so that's even more damage we're missing. And that's pretty much it for the skill rotation. Sometimes you will get kicked out of Swarmblade. That's completely fine because it's only a 6-second cooldown, so you just run around and go back to Swarmblade and you're good to go. And by the time you go back to Swarmblade, you'll probably have some vines. On bosses, it doesn't matter because you have rage gain on hit right here. So you get rage gain on boss hit, and this is enough to sustain your rage permanently on any boss in the game as long as you're applying tornadoes to them. And that's pretty much it for the skill rotation. Now for the skills, first Swarmblade form. So we take 1 point into Viper's Call. This makes it so that our melee attack is Serpent Strike. This allows us to get a bunch of functionality out of it. As you'll see later, 2 points into Endless Pressure. Like I said, this is how you sustain rage on bosses. You don't need to summon vines on bosses. And this actually makes it so whenever you hit a rare enemy in the monolith, you can pretty much just go back up to full rage whenever you find a rare enemy. So that's really nice as well. The tornadoes will give you rage, your melee attacks will give you rage, and you'll gain rage on kill, which this combined with the rage on vine will give you enough to do monoliths with. Then we have 1 point into Wind Fury Strikes to gain a stack of Howling Cascade. It'll make it so it casts a tornado after every 6 attacks, but then we bring it down to 3, so every 3 attacks, and since we have a decent amount of attack speed here, as I can show you, we have about 200%, I believe, yeah, something like that. It means that we actually do 1 per second, or at least even more than that. We get even more attack speed, which is really, really good because that's per second, and you keep adding tornadoes, and your damage ramps up insanely, as you saw there earlier. Then 3 points on Wasp Flight. If we had +2 to Swarmblade, please add it. Please. Please, EHG, please add plus to Swarmblade. If we get plus to Swarmblade, you put the rest of the points in here, because like I said, attack speed is insanely exponential for us in terms of damage scaling. Then 5 points into Fervor Stings for the poison chance. This is global poison chance while you're in bug form, which is really good because melee poison chance does not apply to the tornadoes, so we want as much global poison chance as humanly possible, which is why we're grabbing these nodes. Then 2 points travel to Locust Agility, although the flat dodge is nice. Then 3 points into Water Strider. It makes it so we can cast Maelstrom. Maelstrom just gives us some stacks of dodge, and it also gives us Frenzy and Haste. You could do the other version where you go with Summon Wolf, but that's a lot of effort, and you have to use Swarm Strike and stuff, and Swarm Strike doesn't really do much damage, unlike the other version of Swarmblade, which had, like, you know, obviously the Forbidden Night set, not the Forbidden Night, the Shattered Lance set where your Swarm Strike actually did damage. That's not the case here, which is fine. So that's why we go for the dash version with Maelstrom. And also Maelstrom does give you extra hits per second, which will apply even with the tornadoes as well. So it's just extra damage. And that's pretty much it for Swarmblade. There's not really much else you'd want to grab in the tree. If you wanted to go bleed and poison, you could technically go with this, although this is not generic, so I don't think this would still be worth it anyways. And that's pretty much it for the skill tree. There's not really much else different here. Now for Serpent Strike here, I do have a +2 to Serpent Strike. You don't need it. You just take 1 point out of Chrono Strike and 1 point out of Scorpion Strikes, and you get plenty of attack speed. So I can show you here our damage here. I can show you how much percentage we get. And that's without buffs up. That's without like any attack speed. We're missing like 50% attack speed, and we're already getting to 2000% increased damage. Now I'm going to let that ramp back down so you can see what it looks like on the poison damage. We get to insane amounts of poison damage, as you can tell there, and that's not counting obviously the res shred and stuff. 700 poison damage, that is a lot of poison damage. This is probably going to get nerfed, this stuff, because it's exactly how Spirit Plague worked, except it's technically better in some regards. We take 4 points into Nagasa Venom for the poison chance and duration, but it's travel, doesn't matter. Into Venomous Intent. This poison spit, I believe, poisons and has the same poison chance as everything else, but that's not what we're building around. We have 5 points in Chrono Strike. This is, like I said, most of our percentage damage. This makes it so we can focus all of our prefixes on other stuff. Then 2 points into Plague Bearer Travel. Plague doesn't really do much for you. Then 5 points into Scorpion Strikes for a bunch more increased damage. And both of these combined is how we deal all of our increased damage. And this is global increased damage. so it applies for all of our Maelstroms too. So Serpent Strike actually isn't doing much of the damage, it's just buffing us, which is really nice. And of course, with Primal Reflex, as you can tell, if I just sit here and attack a little bit, we get a bunch of dodge, and in Monoliths, with a little bit more buffs up, we get up to like 60% dodge, which is nuts. And that's pretty much it for Serpent Strike. For Tornado, this is a lot different than your stereotypical Tornado tree because we're actually using it for damage. So you take 1 point into Charged Storm. This makes it so tornadoes cast lightning every few seconds, but then we get some frequency there. If you had +2 to Tornado, you'd put 1 extra point in Frequent Lightning, then 1 point into Trail Storms. I just wasn't lucky enough to land a +2 to Tornado on my gear, but you do definitely want a +2 Tornado, because you could put into Duration instead as well, and that will boost your single target absolutely significantly. Then 1 point into Lasting Storm. Like I said, if you get +2 to Tornado, probably want to put it in here. If you can actually run a Thorn Slinger, you could actually run that as well and put an extra point in here as well. Duration is a direct more damage modifier on bosses for us, which is really nice. Then 2 points travel and debris. The increased mana cost doesn't really matter. Tornado does deal 44% more damage, and that applies to everything, I believe. I think that applies to everything. I'm not entirely sure. Then Tornado Orb. Oh, no, it does not scale. It does not scale with the nodes on this tree. So yeah, I believe it's the same thing. Yeah, so this will not apply to those, which is fine. Storm Orbs, cast speed reduction doesn't matter because we don't care about cast speed. This casts like a little Storm Orb, and it's just an extra hit. So every single tornado we use does a little bit of a hit, like 2 hits per second, which is insane because we're getting a lot of tornadoes, right? Then, of course, points into frequency. Once you get some plus levels, you can always mess around with this. Then 1 point into Aspect of the Storm, just for the movement speed. Movement speed's really nice. This is always up because we're always casting tornadoes. Then 3 points into Storm Dervish. The attack speed is nice because, like I said, attack speed is directly exponential. So as much attack speed as humanly possible. 2 points travel into Stormbinder, doesn't matter. 3 points into Strength of the Air. This is actually what is making our tornadoes pull so hard, and that's why we can just walk up to packs and kind of collect them together and they all die, which makes Tornado feel so much better. Then 1 point into Druidic Control makes it so we have stationary tornadoes. Now, Amarathi and I have had disagreements about this node. I like it because, for the poison version specifically, is because you want as many poisons on the enemy as possible on single target to get the more damage, right? The Frostbite version doesn't have to worry about this as much because it doesn't rely upon having a bunch of stacks on the enemy to deal damage. It just deals damage. Well, this, you actually need to have stacks on the enemy. So the 20% less damage, I think we take that and we're fine with it. Which I don't even think this -20 actually applies to Storm Orb or Lightning, because the same way this node works with all the other stuff. So I'm not entirely sure that -20% damage works. But yeah, that's pretty much it for Tornado. Spriggan is your stereotypical utility Spriggan tree. It's the same exact utility Spriggan tree that I did before. You might want to take 2 nodes out of Terra's Bulwark and puts it into Bulb Growth so we have even more shields, but I found that this is plenty. Of course, we want the 3 points in Garden of Rage. This is what we're actually spawning when we use a Terrace Path here. I'll show you. There you go. Sometimes you get a little screwed over. Sometimes you just get randomly kicked out of Swarmblade form because you just didn't have any vines on the ground and you weren't paying attention. But 99% of the time, you're fine. And of course, we have 5 points to Creeping Underbrush to make it so we summon a vine on death. So even if vines die, as you can tell, we get a bunch of them back, which makes sure that we always have vines. And that's pretty much it for the Spriggan tree. Like I said, we have the Thorn Shield stuff because we have the node inside Druid. Funnily enough, even with dodge, like 60% dodge, this is up all the time because we're forced to be in melee range, so we're always getting hit anyways. So it's nice to have this anyways. And that's pretty much it for that. Because, like, what else are you really going to put the nodes into, huh? You could, like, technically, like, do Hunter's Bane, make them range and give them poison damage. But it's like, we do plenty of poison damage as it is. We don't need that. I'd rather have the extra armor. If you have, like, up to 4 stacks, you get up to, like, 50% armor, which is, like, definitely worth it on, like, Fireball, Mage packs, and stuff like that. So definitely worth the investment. And Maelstrom, this is your stereotypical Maelstrom utility tree. The only difference is we don't need to run the mana efficiency here because we have plenty of mana sustain. And of course, we have the power of the storm. We obviously want the frenzy and haste, the duration so they last longer, and the healing just for a little bit more sustain. You technically don't need this. Your bleeding heart is enough to keep you alive, but I like to be topped off. So this helps you get topped off. And you can get up to like 12 stacks, which is like 48 healing per second, which obviously isn't that much, but what else are you really going to grab in this tree, right? Like you can grab more chill chance, like there's not really much else you can grab. So it's nice to always have this. And that's pretty much it for the skills. Now for the passives here. We take 8 points in natural attunement. We're actually using attunement to help us cap our crit avoid. That's why we're actually stacking a little bit of it. I had to change my gear around, but you definitely want to be running attunement on your prefixes because not only does it give you increased damage with your tornadoes as well, as you can tell there, it also gives you increased damage with your Armblade Slash, which is your Serpent Strike Armblade Slash thingy. Then, of course, like I said, it also gives you the crit avoid thanks to the node at the top of the Druid tree, this one. This is really nice because this build is kind of unique intensive somewhat, and you do not have room to put crit avoid everywhere, so it's nice to have all this. And you don't want to run crit avoid on Dragon because you can get poison chance, global poison chance, which is a large amount of damage. Obviously, I don't have that, but that's because Dread farmed it for like, I think a day and still hasn't gotten it. So, you know, but obviously you want that. Then 1 point into Harmony of Blades makes it so we can dual wield katanas, obviously the best in slot. 5 points into Hunter's Restoration for increased health. 5 points into Berserker. If you do not see someone taking this, including me, call them out for it. This is by far one of the best nodes in the entirety of Druid. Not because you can go low life with it. Low life sucks. Get that in your head. Low life sucks. But this is a lot of damage reduction, which is nice. And it's like it stacks on top of your endurance. Then we take 10 points in Shaman. We take 4 points in this for a little bit more attunement. 1 travel point here so we can get the attack speed with the totem. We have a Thorn Totem on hit. You technically don't need this. You could actually take these out and make sure you have 5 points for Tornado. And then go more points in a Hide Skin. But I found that I actually didn't really need Hide Skin. I know, it's weird. I had plenty of sustain. I was tanky enough. The dodge was enough. Like I didn't feel like as though I needed it. Then stereotypical setup for a Beastmaster. I really don't need a harp on this anymore. It's just, you know, aspect of the boar stuff, you know, aspect of the shark, the strength and the damage taken is really nice. But that's pretty much it for there. 3 points travel to Chitinous Plating. So you can take 5 points in the Thicket of Thorns. So you get Thorn Shields when you get hit, which is, like I said, really strong with the Spriggan tree. 7 points into Spirit Warden for the HP. You could put 7 points instead into Druidic Prowess for extra attunement to cap your crit avoid, but it depends on what you're at. Then 3 points travel into Focus Wrath. 1 point into Rancor makes it so I can stand here and talk to you guys while I talk about the build while not being kicked out of form and other situations, obviously. 5 points into Wind of the Leaves. This gives you a bunch of attack speed, which is nice. Now, I do not have this node. This node is insane for this build, okay? You want to be taking all 10 of it. You want to find a way to make sure you're taking all 10 of it. I do not have it because Bleed lags my computer significantly. And I'm doing a bunch of melee attacks, and it's going to make me lag. Now, if you don't lag with Bleed, like most people don't, grab these nodes. It's a lot of poison chance because all of your damage is coming from spells anyways. 8 points into Harmonious Wisdom for the crit avoid per attunement. Like I said, saves us a lot of suffixes. It's insane. It's like one of the best reasons to be Druid. Then 4 points travel into Woodland Beings. 1 point into Fetid Resilience travel. Then obviously you could probably take all of these nodes and put it into Nightshade Fangs instead, but I put it in here because obviously poison chance. Maybe you could justify going for both of them if you think you have enough points. You could always take the points out of Shaman. You could like try to skim some here. Like it's a little difficult. Like Druid is definitely point intensive, so it's like really hard, especially if you take into account Hide Skin. Then of course we take 5 points in Impervious. This gives us stacks of DR, and what's really nice about it is the fact that it works really well dodge. So you lose a stack when you get hit. But the thing is, since you have 60% dodge, you don't get hit that often, which means you keep up your stacks max. This is actually better than Hide Skin in this situation. Normally hide skin is better, but since we're at 60% dodge, impervious is like nuts, absolute nuts tier. Like one of the best reasons to be a druid, especially on bosses. As you can tell in the footage, I could literally face tank Oribus like it was nothing. And that's pretty much it for the passives. Now for the gearing. So my gearing's a little messed up here and there, but for idols, you want one chance to summon Thorn Totem on hit. That's only if you want to grab the attack speed. If you think you're missing attack speed, like I said, it's exponential, so attack speed's really good. You want chance to poison on hit. You want three of these little buggers, because that's global poison chance, and global poison chance is the best for you because it applies to everything you do, and this is like one of the best ways to scale your damage here. And of course, resistance, HP, whatever else you can just slam in it. But yeah, mainly poison on hit. You want probably aspect of the boar effect. It would give you a little bit extra TR, but it's like not entirely like mandatory. Mainly, you just want the generic poison on hit. This is insanely strong for us. They're like, you get damage over time while transformed and stuff, but like this is so much better. Now for the helmet, you want the crit multi while transformed because we're using Salt the Wounds. Why are we using Salt the Wounds, you ask? Well, I can show you. Since we are not going Beastmaster, we cannot go with the aspect of the Viper setup where it just gives us increased poison effect, which means we got to get our poison effect elsewhere. And if you don't know, poison effect double dips. It gives you extra shred while also increasing the damage of said poison, so I can show you why. So I take it off, 52, 91, 52. Now let me show you how big of a difference that makes later on. I'm just going to attack. As you can tell, my poison damage is getting higher, 670, right? We're just going to let it climb down. Like that was like 670. It goes much higher than that if you have actual attack speed. Now let me show you without them. Gives us about like almost double. So yeah, Salt the Wounds. Good item. And this is not taking into account the res shred. You don't need Salt the Wounds to start the build, but obviously you'd want to eventually move into it. That makes the double katana stuff so much better. As you can tell, I'm not even max into katanas. Like I don't even have crit multi. This is perfect, except for the damage over time. You want that to be crit multi. If you were to get another prefix, you would probably want that damage over time, probably. Like if you were to do sealed prefixes, which I think you should be sealing your katanas and then doubling them with runes of creation. You want a really good katana like this with crit multi, and the damage over time would be amazing. Just slap it, bam, you got two of them, amazing. One of the best rune of creation targets. And of course, the other one's like just as like Like I said, more crit multi means more poison effect. More poison effect equals good. Then chest here, crit multi while transformed. Vitality, you could run +2 to tornado here. You could play attunement. You can do whatever. Mainly, you just want the crit multi while transformed because, as you can tell, out. Get a little bit of effective damage out of that, especially thanks to the crit multi while transformed. You can't run it on idols because it's melee crit while transformed on idols, but on gear, it's generic crit multi while transformed, which makes it worth it on gear. I am using a bleeding heart. This is your best in slot. If you don't have a bleeding heart, it's fine. You'll just need health on hit on your weapons and stuff like that. But bleeding heart, obviously best in slot. One of the best ways to leech poison, and it's definitely worth the slot. If you need to, you can always slam runes of ascendance on it. Runes of ascendance, where's them? Runes of ascendance, I have plenty because I've been playing a bunch. But yeah, you can slam runes of ascendance on them, and that would be helpful. You just slam it on any amulet, and this is very common. Or you could just farm it in Age of Winter as well. Either way, it's pretty easy to get one of these pretty quickly. You don't even need the 9% leech, like even 4% leech would be plenty with how much your damage scales. And since we don't actually cast any spells in Swarmblade, we don't give a shit about the bleed, right? That's pretty much it for that. Vipertail, best in slot belt, obviously generic poison chance is insane for us. The dodge rating is insane because that applies to the flat dodge from our Serpent Strike. I have a very terrible roll. You want a legendary with this with HP, and that would be amazing, absolutely amazing. One of the best legendary targets. Then rings, you want attunement, and then damage over time, and then resistance, attunement, damage over time, and then like whatever rings you can mass, like endurance, crit avoid, probably one crit avoid roll to help you cap out your crit avoid. Gloves, Salt the Wound, obviously. You can run Wing Guards. I can actually show you the difference between Wing Guards and Salt the Wounds here. Obviously, you'd need to change probably from katanas to Nagasa scimitars. But let me get some. Let me show you the difference. So we're getting to like 800k forehand. I'm just waiting for some vines to summon because the problem is the dummy doesn't count as a boss. So it's like we got to do this before I can show you the dummy stuff. Put on the wing guards. So we're getting to like 800k before, like 800k, 700k, that kind of stuff. I'm waiting for a little bit more vines. I guess we're just gonna do it. There you go. There you go. And we're just gonna attack the dummy here. And I'll show you that the difference is not actually that big. It's about 500,000. So you get like 300,000 from just running Assault the Wound instead. Obviously, this isn't taking into account running Nagasa scimitars, but definitely you can run this build with just wing guards until you get up. Also, as well, I believe it just gives you more dodge as well, so it's actually the tankier option. That would be close to 70% when max rolled, so that's nice. When the max stuff. Obviously, it's nice to have the Fizz Res though. But yeah, Assault the Wound's best in slot, but wing guards is a very close second. Then boots, this is mandatory. You need this. Without it, you have to go into like some shenaniganry with like raider axes or like poison daggers or whatever, which could work, but you'd have much less damage. Just being able to summon vines and like it's obviously best in slot. It's like not really much I can say. It doesn't really matter what they are. This is a really good legendary target as well because you can get a lot of movement speed on it. But yeah, like I said, required. I would definitely farm this out before actually playing this build. There are plenty of other builds you can play, like for instance Cold Out Werebear, that's on the channel as well. You'd probably be able to play that until you can swap into this if you get into Terra's path. And then Relic, like +2 Serpent Strike's really strong because the more increased damage is really strong, or the attack speed if you're so inclined. Then of course resistance, like crit multi, stuff like that. This one's really shitty. It's nice to show you guys my shitty gear to see how broken it is without good gear, right? It's kind of funny. Yeah, that's pretty much it for blessings. I will talk about it this time because they are somewhat required. You want crit multi, obviously. Then of course poison chance, then resistance, endurance. You don't need this cold shred. It's just I've been like swapping between characters, so I haven't really like completely farmed out blessings. I do plan on playing another cold build eventually, so that's why I didn't want to get rid of that. But yeah, with all that being said, thank you all for watching. Have a wonderful rest of your day wherever you're at, and go sub to Amarathi because he's going to be making the Frostbite version, which looks insane, by the way. It's doing more damage than this is. So have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye.